Welcome. One of my favorite jokes. My aunts used to come up to me at weddings and say, "You're next." But they stopped when I started doing the same thing to them at funerals. Nothing like death. Tara and I have a little challenge for each other every now and then. And where we challenge each other is to say, if this was your last talk, what would you most want to say? And I kind of brought that into what I'd like to share a little bit with you here. Recently, as of the beginning of the year, I offered a little exploration on intentions, which is a big part of my practice. And then on habits, like what are the little things you can do that are going to result in the intentions that you want to bring more alive. And so I thought on this talk, we might explore a little bit on holding this in perspective. And that has to do with impermanence. What's the most important thing to remember is kind of what I try to remember. And I'm reminded of someone, a psychologist who shared that he said, sometimes when I'm working with a client and there's really nothing happening, I like to ask, so how do you feel about dying? It always works. What I'd like to talk about is 4 things. First, you are going to die. Second, however, you're not dead yet. Third, how to live with death on your left shoulder, as Carlos Castaneda famously said. And fourth, knowing you're going to die, how do you love the mystery? That's it's a juicy topic. So first, you are going to get sick, get old, and die. That's a fact. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about my grandfather. My grandfather was a pretty amazing guy. His name was Bill Kingston, but his original name was Wilhelm Kaiser, which was not a great name to have living in the United States, especially going into business. But I remember him as an old guy. I remember him going out to pick berries. I remember him walking with a cane. And I ran across some photographs of him. He actually happened to be an avid photographer. So there are a lot of photographs. And there was a shot of him at Lake George when he was maybe around 40. And the guy was built. He was a really good-looking, strong, vibrant guy. He went from living in extreme poverty to, at one point, as he was an engineer and loved mechanical things, he actually owned a Stutz Bearcat, which was the fastest production car in the world at that time, top speed of 125 miles an hour. And apparently he liked to drive it at that speed. He was born in extreme poverty. He spoke only German. He grew up on a farm in, I think, southern Illinois. Somehow, he put himself through college and engineering school, and he ran very complex electrical utilities. He built his own house with his own hands. And he went from this stud to an old man shuffling along the side of the road, as I remember him with his green AM radio and a little ear thing. If you've looked in the mirror recently, you may have noticed you're older. From time to time, I catch myself in a mirror and I think, who's that old guy I'm looking at right now? And I love that image, or sort of like that sense of, if you think about looking in the mirror when you were a kid, say brushing your teeth when you're 6 years old, and compare that to looking in the mirror, brushing your teeth now, you may have noticed that you're older. But the question is there something in you looking in the mirror that hasn't changed? Have you changed? Has the one who's observing changed? It's just a fascinating thing. The body's aging, but does awareness age? So obviously we live in a culture where we live in denial of death. We do what we can to stave it off, hang on to our vitality any possible way we can. And it can be really helpful to pause and actually turn toward this reality of death. Lots of traditions have different ways of exploring this inevitable fact of death. In one way, it seems kind of morose. On the other hand, it can be pretty interesting stuff. Different yogic and Buddhist traditions have these practices of sitting in meditation in the charnel grounds, actually sitting there as corpses are being cremated. There is a meditation which I will not lead you in that is a reflection on the stages of a decaying corpse. There are meditations where you reflect on the different components of the body, all separated into different buckets or baskets. A bucket with bones, a bucket with flesh, a bucket with hair, nails, and teeth, a bucket with bile and fluids, a bucket with the fats. These meditations are really not necessarily to create disgust with the body necessarily, but they're about bringing you in contact with reality. The reality of impermanence. The reality that anything born out of causes and conditions is subject to change. And I'm pretty sure you know people who are no longer here. And you know what it's like when you lose someone really close to you. It is devastation. It's devastating. And then in that devastation of loss is that realization of impermanence. And sometimes for me, particularly earlier in my life when someone close to me would die, it would create kind of a catharsis. What's important? What do I want to remember? How do I want to live? And then that sense of devastation and urgency fades. And at least for me, I then kind of go back to being someone on his way somewhere. So there's this direct relationship between embracing the reality of death and living your life. In the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha talked, of course, a lot about this. And he talked about how embracing the fact of your death results in profound wisdom and profound compassion, the awakening of these two wings of practice. He said that people would not argue if they remember that they will die. Remembering that even your enemies will die can soften the heart and bring us to this realization of our collective shared human experience. So you're going to die, and for now, if you're listening to this, you're not dead yet. I have an annual posting I do on my birthday on Facebook that is entitled Visual Evidence I'm Not Dead Yet. Realizing that you're going to die and realizing you're not dead yet opens up some really cool possibilities. And I can't think of a better example than Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol. We all know about Ebenezer Scrooge, who was this elderly, miserly guy who sacrificed everything for money. He was tight-fisted, narrow-minded, and Christmas Eve he's visited by the ghost of his partner, Jacob Marley. And he's told he has to listen to the coming visitations. And if he doesn't pay attention, he'll be cursed to carry the heavy chains of his own making. Basically, you're going to just continue down this track of the karma unless you listen to these heavenly messengers. And so he's visited by these ghosts. He's visited by the reality of his own death. And of course, we all know what's on the other side of that transformational journey for him. His realization upon waking, Scrooge says, "I don't know what to do," laughing and crying in the same breath. "I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am merry as a schoolboy." And Scrooge realizes this and becomes a generous, lighthearted friend filled with compassion for all. what a perfect thing. Dickens nailed it. That story obviously touched something universal in all of us. By the way, Charles Dickens, after he published it, his publishers tried to rip him off. He sued them, and then they went out of business, and he lost his income from that book. But in 1849, though, he began doing public readings. It was so successful, he did 127 performances of reading A Christmas Carol, right up till the year of his death in 1870. So I love the idea of him reading that story and how it resonates for all of us. We fall asleep thinking this world is real. We think that this life is all there is, and whoever dies with the most toys wins. And the reality of it opens us to the mystery. So, a short meditation. And again, I'm not going to lead a meditation on the decaying corpse, but a short reflection on aliveness. If you like, you can close your eyes. You might take 3 slow, deep breaths and turn your attention to the sense door of sound. And to the sense door of taste. The sense of smell. The sense of feeling. And the sense of the light beyond your closed eyes. And take a moment now, if you like, to imagine, who are you transcendent of sound if you could not hear? Who are you if you could not taste? Who are you if you could not smell? If you could not feel? If you could not see? And then again, if you would, open up the sense doors of sound, taste and smell, feeling and sight. Sense doors wide open. And imagine at the same time this quality of open, alive awareness. When you're ready, you can deepen the breath. You can open your eyes, or you can remain with them closed. This aliveness of the body is such a miracle, particularly when we reflect on losing any one of these senses. Our willingness to explore the reality of death can open up new possibilities. And I just want to share a short story. When I was with my dad in hospice at the very end, when I was with both of my parents as they were going through their passing, I kind of embraced this phrase that really helped me, of wholehearted cooperation with reality. Like to really see the reality of what's happening. And so the hospice nurse saw my interest as I was with my dad. And she explained what was happening as he was going through the process of passing. How the extremities, the limbs started to turn gray. How his breath started working harder. And she pointed out how now the sort of the wisdom of life force was abandoning the extremities to keep the core alive. and then how that transitioned to the final breath. Seeing it so intimately, and I've had the gift of being with a number of beings who have passed, is so profound. It's so profound. While there are many different meditations, one thing that can be very helpful is referred to as the 5 daily recollections. These are just 5 suggestive things to reflect on each day. And I'll just read these through, and you can kind of reflect on how they might resonate for you. I am of the nature to age and decay. I have not gone beyond aging and decay. I am of the nature to become ill or injured. I have not gone beyond illness or injury. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond death. All that is mine, dear and delightful, will change and vanish. I am the owner of my actions. I am born of my actions. I am related to my actions, and I am supported by my actions, and any thoughts, words, or actions I do, good or evil, those I will inherit. Again, these reflections can seem really morose. I'm going to age. I'm going to become ill. I'm going to die. Everything I love is going to vanish. What I have are my actions, my words, my thoughts, my deeds. Karma. That which I do, that I will inherit. It's a powerful way to remind ourselves of what's most important. The Buddha spoke of really 3 things. First, the inevitability of death. Everyone has to die. Your lifespan is decreasing continuously. And the amount of time in your life to develop your mind and awareness is relatively small. The second is to reflect on the uncertainty of the time of death. Human life is uncertain. There are many causes of death, he said, and the body is so fragile. And third, the fact that only insight into the nature of reality can help you at the time of death. To recognize that possessions will not help you. Your loved ones cannot help you. Your own body cannot help you. So you're going to die. But you're not dead yet. So Carlos Castaneda famously said, live as if death was an advisor on your left shoulder. And that's such a powerful, powerful image. And I try to remember that. And I forget all the time, of course. But part of my focus on intentions and habits this year, I'm setting up monthly themes. So every month, I have a theme, and then I try to bring my habits in alignment with that particular theme. And this January, I'm really focused on, I've talked about this before. If I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's called dostandning. And dostandning is Swedish for death cleaning. Now, the whole idea here is it's usually done as you get older, but it can be done at any time. It's sort of like cleaning up your affairs so it's not a mess for the people who've got to clean up after you. So for me, I've kind of made a commitment this month to just cleaning everything up. And so part of my commitment this month, as I've been doing these, observations, one thing every day, and one thing I do, one thing I don't do, is I'm taking a half an hour every day for cleaning or organizing or designing my affairs. And then one thing a day that I get rid of, that I give away. So far, so good. It's been really powerful. I've cleaned up a lot of stuff and I feel a lot lighter. And it's been very, very helpful for me to really reflect on what it means for me to live simply and to embrace the fact that one day, who knows when, this body won't be here anymore. And what I've noticed is the more I let go, the freer I feel inside. So living with death on your left shoulder as your advisor can really help to sharpen attention. So I'd like to lead a reflection, which I've led before. It's just a few minutes, but I find it to be a very interesting way to kind of sharpen awareness. I'll be offering a few questions and giving you some time in between just to notice what spontaneously arises for you. So if you like, you can close your eyes. And you might slow down your breath. And if you like, you can take 3 slow, deep breaths. Allow yourself to simply notice what spontaneously arises in the following questions. If you had 1 year remaining in this life, what would you do with this year? If you had 1 week remaining in your life, what would you do? If you had 1 day remaining, what would you do? If you had 1 hour remaining in your life, what would you do? If you had 1 breath remaining, what would you do? You might again take 3 slow, deep breaths. And just sense what's present for you through these questions. How do you feel inside right now? As you're ready, you can deepen your breath if you like. You can open your eyes or you can remain with them closed. There's a beautiful book written by a hospice worker who sat with people all through her career and passing. She claimed the number 1 regret of the dying was, I wasn't true to myself. Embracing impermanence can be a powerful way of amplifying what it means to be true to yourself. So without being morose, it's helpful to remember that any moment could be your last. 52% of car accidents are within 5 miles of home. 72% are less than 15 miles from home. That's not great odds. But what I find, and again, I don't remember this all the time, but when I do, when I'm with someone and I think to myself, what if this is the last time I see this person? What if this is the last time we'll be together? When I'm with a collection of people, what if this is the last time this gathering will ever happen in this way? To me, it's an inspiration to not hold back my gratitude, to not hold back a reflection of someone's goodness. I have these vague memories of my grandfather and my grandparents. I have no recollection about my great-grandparents other than just a few little data points. My great-grandparents are kind of lost to me. Great, I don't have the slightest clue. And when I reflect on that, in that many generations, I'll be gone. You'll be gone. My dad always loved to say, imagine a picture of you at a flea market where the buyer is evaluating whether the frame is worth the money. That's our destiny. Dust to dust. Whether or not you believe in reincarnation, who knows? But as someone said, if you're coming back for your next life, why not make this life to set yourself up with the best karma you can? And if you're not coming back, why not live the most satisfying life you can? And there's a beautiful little teaching about sukha and dukkha. Well, I'll be offering a talk on this down the road. Dukkha is the stress, dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness of life. And sukha is the sweetness of life. So sometimes in our pursuit of happiness, when we're looking for short-term happiness, we end up with dukkha. And when you focus on long-term happiness, you end up with sukha. So why not live your life in a way that cultivates the deepest sense of sweetness? Embracing our immortality can open us up into some amazing spaces. And Tara's mother moved down to live with us. She was here about 4 years before she got very, very sick and ultimately died at home. And I remember one particular thing as she was getting weaker and weaker. It was kind of a chilly day, and we kind of wrapped her up in a blanket, and she was sitting in the back porch looking out into the woods. And I was on my way to Monday night class, and I was kind of aware I needed to get in the car and get going, and rushing a little bit. But I realized I hadn't said hello to her yet that day. So I went over to chat with her, and I was a little bit amped, getting ready to go and kind of chatting away, and she was listening, or I think she was listening. And then she said, "Look at those clouds over there. Look at the light on that cloud." And I just stopped and looked at the cloud with her. And then I kind of got back into kind of a infotainment mode and kind of chatting and so forth. And she said, after a few minutes, she said, "Look at that bird. Do you see that bird over there on that limb?" So I stopped and I looked at the bird with her. And then I got going again, kind of amplified, chatting up because I had to get on the road. And then she said, When I first met you, you were so terribly busy. Has that changed? Ugh. And as I drove down the driveway, I just had this like, I was just with a Zen master here. So alive, so in the moment, so immersed in non-judging presence. So much compassion. I think that's what's possible when we truly embrace impermanence. Knowing that you may die at any time, what's most important to you? How do you choose to live? As I've reflected on this, I keep coming back to that quote, which has really been kind of a real basic guideline for me. It's a quote from E.B. White, who said, I wake up each morning torn between a desire to serve the world and to savor it. And this makes it difficult to plan the day. And I find myself, as I open to that, do I serve? Do I savor? Can I do both? For me, the more I reflect on impermanence, the more creativity I feel. Because I begin to see that anywhere I have fear, my creativity, my aliveness is shut down. When I remember that this is all going to fall away, this precious life and everyone I love will one day disappear, the savoring factor really takes off, as well as the service factor. And so it becomes a very, very interesting question. How do you want to feel at the end of your life? Is there anything that's unfinished between you and that feeling? I've explored different ways to help myself drift off to sleep. And one of the best I've run across is listening to Alan Watts. So I put in my headphones and I listened to Alan Watts. And there's something that he said from his book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, that he wrote in 1951, that the harder you push, the further you kind of blow yourself away. And this is what Alan Watts said. I've always been fascinated by the law of reversed effort. Sometimes I call it the backwards law. When you try to stay on the surface of the water, you sink. But when you try to sink, you float. When you hold your breath, you lose it. Which immediately calls to mind an ancient and much neglected saying, whosoever would save his soul shall lose it. So Alan Watts. But to me, this suggests that surrender is the path. Surrendering to reality and surrendering to the mystery. This quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson. When I look up at the night sky, I know that, yes, we are part of this universe. We are in this universe. But perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect on that fact, I look up. Many people feel small because they're small and the universe is big, but I feel big because my atoms came from those stars. There's a level of connectivity. It's really what you want in life. You want to feel connected. You want to feel relevant. You want to feel like you're a participant in the goings-on of activities and events around you. That's precisely what we are, just by being alive. So I'd like to close with a meditation. If you like, you can close your eyes. You might take 3 slow, deep breaths. Imagine that you can feel all the space inside your body. Imagine that you can feel the space in front of your body and the space behind your body extending out beyond the furthest stars. Imagine you can feel the space to the left of your body and to the right of your body extending out beyond the furthest stars. Can you imagine the space beneath your body and above your body extending out beyond the furthest stars? And can you imagine the space inside your body and the space outside your body extending out beyond the furthest stars as one vast continuous space? Reflecting that this body is of the nature to age. This body is the nature to become ill, to die. Everything in this life at one point will vanish. Reflecting that your thoughts, your actions are what you will inherit. Sensing the inevitability of death, the uncertainty of death. And how embracing insight into the nature of reality can help you at that time. And in the meantime, how do you wish to live? How would you like to feel at the end of this life? And what would you need to live the life that you feel called to? You might now take 3 slow, deep, and smooth breaths. And you might take a moment before we close to, in your own way, wish yourself well. Imagine your journey through this life filled with a greater sense of ease and well-being. Imagine your life informed with greater ease by wisdom, and by the compassionate and wise heart. If there is anyone you know who might be struggling in their life right now, You might take these moments to wish them well. To wish them the wisdom of insight. That they may open to the immeasurable qualities of compassion, kindness, joy, and steadiness. Offering this well-wishing out in all directions to all beings without discrimination. May all beings feel peace. May all beings feel happy. May all beings feel free from stress and suffering. And imagine, finally, as you radiate that out in all directions, beyond the furthest stars, that you could radiate that within to each cell of your body. As you're ready now, you can deepen your breath. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. Thank you for hanging out with this contemplation on impermanence and the possibility of what it means to be fully and ridiculously alive. Best wishes to you, and I look forward to being with you again.